Hi there, Sandy here. Welcome to another jewelry making video at keepsakecrafts.net. Most of us who do any sort of creative activity often do many different things, dabble in different crafts and buy up the supplies. And today I have a great jewelry project for you that uses some scrapbooking and paper crafting supplies. So if any of you have followed my blog for any time, you know that quite a few years back I did a lot of scrapbooking. And I still do make cards and such, and I have a lot of dies and tools used in scrapbook making. And it occurred to me that it would be fun to try to use some of them to make some metal jewelry. So these are steel rule dies. This happens to be a Tim Holtz die, his Tattered Florals. And it's almost like a big sharp cookie cutter in between layers of foam, and that's the die. If I press on it, I can feel it press on my fingers. And you need to use this kind of die to cut sheet metal. This is some 24 gauge copper sheet metal, and we're going to use that to make a toggle and also some charms for a bracelet. Now you need to use this kind of die. For paper crafting, there are also these. Sometimes they're called sizzlets by Sizzix or thinlets. And you could see they're just wafer thin dies. And they cut paper fine, but they're not going to cut through metal. The same goes for these sorts of dies. Wonderful for cutting out paper, not metal. So you need to have, like I said, the thicker steel rule dies to cut metal. And then just go through what you have and see if you can get creative with it. This is how I keep my dies sorted. These are 12 by 12 page protectors. And what I did was cut out the dies from each of my dies and then pasted them in here. And that way, at a glance, I can see what I have for dies. And this is really useful. I think I pulled off the button for this one because I'm going to use it as the center of my toggle clasp. So I decided I'm going to use this flower from this die and cut out the center with the button. I really do need to invest in some circle cutters. And then I'll use this little flower in this set to cut out some charms. And then you can see here that I also use another scrapbooking tool, and those are embossing folders. Again, these work great to emboss paper, but if your metal is thin enough and soft enough, it can emboss metal as well. So I have a few of these to add some texture. Now this one is going to be for my large flower, but I wasn't thinking and I embossed it first. And I think that when I cut out the shape on the die, it's going to flatten it out. We'll see. But now that I've run it through the embossing folder, you can see it's much harder than this metal. You can see how nice and soft and flexible this is and how much harder this is. So you'll have to anneal it with every step. And that involves using one of these, a micro torch. Don't be scared. It's a really wonderful tool to use. And if you want to learn how to use it safely, I'm going to put a link on my blog post to a free Craftsy class that Kate Richboard teaches on using a micro torch. It's a great class. She teaches you all the safety, and I highly recommend you view it before you pick up one of these. But it's a great thing to have. There's a lot you can do with it, even just simple jewelry stuff. So I'm going to switch over to the torch and anneal this to soften it in preparation for cutting it out with the die. Okay, so here's my torch setup. It's just a metal baking tray that I think I got at the Salvation Army. There's a dish of water, my safety glasses. Here's a charcoal brick with my piece on it and my torch. And my tweezers ready to pick up the piece once I'm done. And then here's a cool little trick. If you want to know that you've heated your piece of metal up to the annealing temperature, just scribble some Sharpie on it. When the Sharpie marker is gone, then you know that your metal is the right temperature. I'm not going to give you a course in microtorch use or safety, but do make sure that you learn all those things before you start using one. So I'm just going to heat up my metal. And I don't know if you noticed the pretty colors that it turned. before. It'll do that in the torch. You can stop at any point and have some really lovely colors. They don't last forever though because of oxidation. They'll eventually change, but you can get some really cool greens and purples. So I'm just heating up the whole piece of metal. And this doesn't take very long. If you like this video, I hope that you'll give it a thumbs up, share, and subscribe if you want to see more like it. I upload new tutorials every Tuesday and Friday. And I'm going to leave this in real time in the video. I don't like boring you, but I want you to have an idea of just how long you need. The bigger the piece, of course, the longer it will take to heat up. And you can see that Sharpie is starting to disappear now. And if you've benefited from my videos, you might consider becoming a patron. You can support this channel with $1 a month or whatever you can afford. There's a link to my Patreon page in the description box that you can check out. And there, that'll do it. Now, of course, this thing is screaming hot. Do not touch it with your fingers. Just have a pair of cross-lock tweezers into the water. And what's really cool is that as soon as it goes in the water, it's cooled off. You can touch it and dry it off and proceed. And where I'm proceeding to is my die cutting machine. Again, if you've done paper crafts and any die cutting, you're probably familiar with the machine like this. You just roll your pieces through and it embosses or cuts. So I have my piece set up here with one cutting plate, my die. I have my annealed piece of metal, and I made sure and dried it off because I don't want to get any of these blades wet, risk them being wet and rusting in there. I've placed that over the spot that I want to cut. I have another cutting plate, and if you need to, you can always put a little piece of tape to keep that in place, like washi tape. Here's another cutting plate. And then you'll have to do some experimenting with your machine on this. I found I need a shim for this to cut through this metal. And I just have 2 pieces of typing paper, both folded into quarters. And I found that gives enough pressure to cut through. And then, now if your machine feels like it's going to break, stop. You don't want to break your machine. But I've done this before. I know this will work with mine. Just go slow. And you could see I might have to do a little work to get the metal away, but it is cut. So you can see I use my metal shears just to cut away this edge that's left in sections. It would have definitely been better if I had not embossed this first, as I think I would have gotten a cleaner cut. But I'm just kind of working it, and then as I get a piece off, I'll cut that off. And I'm nearly there. And here's what happens when you send annealed, untextured metal through the die cutting machine with the proper amount of shims. It just pops right out. So, like I said, you might want to take a little bit of time and experiment on some small pieces so as not to waste your copper or your time. Now this one I need to send through the machine again, so I'll need to anneal it. And then I actually took my paper and cut out the flower and then cut out the center that's going to be the toggle and kind of made myself a template so that I can place this properly on the die. And you'll just have to get creative with whatever dies you have. So that goes like that. And then I find where that fits on there. Take a little bit of painter's tape or something just to keep it in place. Pop that out. And then I'll run that through the machine again and cut out the center so I'll have my toggle clasp. First, this will have to be annealed again though. So here's my toggle piece ready to go on to the next step. So the proper sequence is first you start with a piece of annealed metal. Then you cut out your main shape and anneal it. Then cut out your center and anneal it. and then run it through the embossing folder. And don't anneal it after that because you want it to remain hard. Now these edges are a little bit rough, and so you'll want to take some files and take some time. And it doesn't take much to knock down that rough edge, but take some time because this is a piece of jewelry that someone's going to wear. And just file it down so that it's nice and smooth. And so that's how you make the main part of your toggle and some charms for your bracelet. In next week's video, I will show you how to finish all this and turn these metal pieces into a bracelet. So if you're interested in the supplies I use, there's a link in the upper right and the description box to go to my blog post. And don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already, and check out my Patreon page to help support these videos. So here's another look at the project we're working on. Thanks for watching. Happy creating. Bye-bye.